Welcome to Accounting High.
That's part of being more prepared. You create these learning opportunities. You create opportunities for them to make a mistake so they can learn from it. We're all going to kind of learn a little bit more along the way. And then so do the hackers. The hackers always learn a little bit more. They're always a few steps ahead of us.
God. I think that one of the sexiest things that I've seen in a long time was to watch a hacker hack a hack. Like,
May I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Accounting High. It's freshman year at a brand new school. Here, we have no rules in place as we're on a mission to set our own traditions. So hang tight and learn with us as we grow. At Accounting High, you can expect to gain knowledge in a completely different way than what you may be used to, with some fun and oftentimes colorful conversations. Whether you loved high school or you hated it, here's your chance to be a part of an unforgettable experience redone. While you're here, don't forget to follow us on Spotify or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may be listening to us right now so you don't miss out on any new episodes. And feel free to leave us a 5-star review letting us know how the school year is treating you. In addition, share this episode on social media, tagging us at Accounting High. So sit back, relax, and open your mind because class is in session.
I repeat, may I have your attention, please?
This is another public service announcement brought to you in part
by Accounting High.
The views and events expressed here are
of the next generation of accounting and tech professionals leading this space.
The events and suggestions are not to be taken lightly. Children should not partake in the listening
of this podcast.
Anything else?
Yeah.
So without further ado, introducing the star of our show,
Scott Scarano and special guest Liz Scott.
We're going to have a problem here.
I got stepped on by the bell. Saved by the bell or stepped on by the bell. We got a very special guest here today. Class is in session. We've got Liz Scott of... I want to say you're of the Appy Hour empire, but also of Accounting Lifeline.
Liz Scott Consulting. Yep.
Appy Hour, Accounting Lifeline. Any others that you want to?
Yeah. So I think altogether there's about 6 companies that I run. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's list them all out.
Okay. So I have rental houses. That's fun. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then Appy Hour, and then we've also got our Appy Hour camp, and then I've got Accounting Lifeline, and then I also have Ace Lifeline. So I work with just franchises there.
And what was so you got Accounting, what was the one before Accounting Lifeline?
Consulting.
Liz Scott Consulting, okay.
Yeah, really and truly, that's the place that I spend the majority of my time is in the consulting space. I think it's fulfilling.
And that's consulting with tech apps, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I think probably about 10 years ago, what was happening is I was connecting these apps and I would see opportunities, or I wouldn't quite understand what I was seeing. And so I would start calling in to the developers and asking questions. And then it quickly changed from, okay, well, now can I ask you questions? And that was really, really fun. The more that I got involved in the tech space, the more that I realized that we all have a similar mission and we just need to be able to connect together. And that really started the foundation of my love of apps. And then, eventually the Appy Hour.
So you're a bridge app between accountants and the techs. Mm-hmm. And that's your perfect guest for this show. Like when I say, accounting and tech professionals, you're the bridge between the two in a lot of ways. You're a role model for me in a lot of ways too.
Oh, so. Well, I don't know about all of that, but I do think that bridge is super important. I think there's several reasons that bridge is really important. And, I'll go back to where I think it fits in as the accounting industry. I love to look at businesses' workflow, like what all are the pieces here? And you have to ask all of those gajillion whys. And so I spend a lot of time there in order to be able to understand how do you connect apps, which apps to connect. But that has allowed me to try out a bunch of apps. And it's made me come, to this point that I'm at right now, which is security. So here we are in generation where there's no way to get away from being online. And I don't want to. That's not my goal. But I definitely believe that when you connect apps, you need to be paying attention to who are you connecting to.
Mm-hmm. I think we should dive into that topic in a minute. Let's talk about you first.
Okay.
Let's go a little bit deeper, right? Let's talk about how you got into, like, because a lot of these revolve around the accounting life, and I'm no pun intended for accounting lifeline, right? But that's going to be the name of my third brand. You know, it's going to go from accounting high to accounting you to accounting life, right? Maybe accounting death or accounting something else, but
accounting death. Hey, that one feels like it's worth talking about.
Well, or accounting prison, right? So, I mean, we started at the Sons of CPAs, and now we're kind of graduating. You know, I'm maturing a little bit, but not really, because high school is like still the metaphor. But accounting life, like your life has kind of revolved around that. But is that what you wanted to do when you were in high school, when you were a kid?
No. And my family is full of entrepreneurs, and so I was really told where I would end up. It's like, oh, you're good in math. Go into the office. And I fought it really hard for a while until, the other side of my family is a whole bunch of developers and coders and flight simulators. That's part of my family was working. My grandpa was working on that program.
Oh, wow.
And so, I had a computer back in the day whenever it was like ridiculously large, and you couldn't bend any of the cords, otherwise you'd break the connection. The computer
I do remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and so programming was a big thing in my family. Programming in small businesses, and so that really kind of bridged together a lot of the foundation of who I am.
Yeah, this isn't about me, but it's a similar thing. My mom was always deep into software, computers, and I was surrounded by that. And my dad was an accountant. My grandfather was an accountant. So it's like that's kind of always been surrounded by that at a young age. So going into school, growing up, did you grow up in Oklahoma?
I did. Yeah, I've never lived anywhere else. I've traveled a ton, and I love traveling because I like to get out of Oklahoma. Your culture doesn't have to be where you live. So I'm a big believer in that. So I like to get out and see, how do other people live?
But there's no place like home.
Listen, I would take off in a heartbeat if it wasn't for the fact that I've got so much family here. I would live in Boston. Boston's the place that speaks to me. Oh gosh. Yeah. The pub crawl. Oh gosh. And being able to go in and talk inside of those pub environments, and it's just loud and it's noisy and everybody's got ideas and you're just throwing around what is it that you think and having this really great, robust conversation. And in my opinion, it's one of the least criticized areas for open conversations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless you're from New York and you're in Boston.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even
you
still,
get criticized. Yeah, well, they're not too friendly. They're like rivals in so many ways.
Okay, so maybe I was just completely an outsider. And each time I've been, though, I've always been welcomed.
Well, you're not representing New York, so it's not
totally true.
I try to represent New York. That's where I'm from originally, but that's nobody usually says Boston though. That's not like, and everybody's like, oh, I want to move to California or these like fancy places, but Boston seems very, like it is a contrast, pretty big contrast from Oklahoma life to Boston life. So I can see where that's desirable. What was there some early memories like that you were in Boston that you're very fond of, or?
I like the downtown life. I like being able to walk outside and have so much accessible to me. And then whenever I'm done, head on back. So yeah, that would be the place that I would end up.
Yeah. Cool. Mm-hmm. So let's see. How did you get started then? I mean, I guess, transitioning from, going to school, entrepreneur life. What was the first business that you started, or did you work anywhere first?
I've been an entrepreneur of all sorts since, I was about 16. And, I sold all kinds of things. At one point, I went to a gas station and I saw somebody in the gas station selling something. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is just a person who walked up to the gas station attendant and asked if they wanted to buy something. And I thought, well, shoot, I can do that too. And I went and bought a large quantity of lighters and sunglasses and a few just other little trinkets. And I went around the gas station. And I was like, I sold them quick.
You sold them in the gas station? You undercut the gas station?
No. I sold them to the gas station. So they were buying them in bulk. Yeah.
That's dope. Oh, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I was 16.
16. So yeah, serial entrepreneur for life. How did you source these? How did you get them at a bulk price that you were able to make a profit on them?
Well, I was asking around, like, even the person that was talking to me, I asked them where they had bought their stuff. And so, like the local flea markets have to buy from some warehouse. And so that's where I ended up going, was to the warehouse.
So you're learning about supply chains, inventory, like at a super young age.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So then, so Liz Wholesale or Liz Lighters. I don't know what you were calling that, but yeah, I mean, so you got your hustles. Where did you really find your passion, or what was like one of the turning points of like, okay, this is what I want to do?
I love making money and being in control of it.
Okay.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I kept on coming back to was being with the family and helping their businesses. I was able to see behind the scenes. And I guess I'm a bit of a voyeur. I love being able to look at what's working and what's not working. And the more sets of books that I was helping, the more I was starting to gather information about, it's management of people, it's management of the dollars, it's making these different business decisions. And that to me was fascinating. You're
looking behind the dressing room of all of these businesses, right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Looking at what ticks. That's the voyeur aspect of it, right? Like you're watching everything. They're getting naked for you, and you're watching it all.
And so just asking you to keep looking. So, geez.
Yeah. Well, and they're paying you for it too. So, but the love of money and control, right? That's, is it because money gives you the freedom of decision and you can make your choices with that? Like what is it for? Usually, it doesn't end at money. Usually we have those base desires or needs. Independence.
Yep.
Okay.
I have always been fiercely independent.
Mm-hmm. And then being able to travel with that too, and make your own choices all along the way. So independence and freedom. Mm-hmm. And do you feel that you've gotten there? And at what point did you really feel like I got this? Like, I don't need anybody else's help.
Well, I'm not even there now. I mean, I feel like I always will want people's help. I will always want to have conversations about how can I be better? How can I do, what's on my plate next? I mean, I look at our industry and it sucks. It's disheartening to me. And so I keep asking for input as to what people are wanting to do next. What are they seeing as far as the industry? Keep talking to app developers. What are they seeing as possibilities? So I don't know that I'll ever be done asking those questions.
Mm-hmm. So it's going back to early days again. So, you're a voyeur, you're looking at these financials, and I guess you hit your stride at least. What was the first business that you still have now of these 5? What was the first one that you started? We're not going to, the rentals too, we could talk about that, but that's a side thing.
So Accounting Lifeline, that's the original of the group.
That's the logo on your wall, right?
Yeah.
That's the logo behind you.
Yep. And so that journey started with my great buddy, Ann Lee, and she lives nearby. And called her up and I said, I was ready to do more of what I had been doing on my own, which was looking at books, and it was time to be able to reach out to somebody other than just what I could see. And I got certified in QuickBooks, and I thought this is my plan forward. And so I was desktop certified, and I went to Ann Lee and I talked to her, and I was asking her about, could we do something together? And I started off as an employee of hers.
What year was this?
2008.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what happened was I became one of those early adopters of QuickBooks Online, back in the days when there was Harmony. So
I don't know Harmony, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, QuickBooks Online started off as Harmony.
Really?
Yeah. And it was crap.
It was. I know that. Like, my parents were developing their cloud platform around that time, and they just, that's kind of what drew me to Xero. That's why we're a Xero firm. But it was, early days. There was FreshBooks was one of the first cloud products, in our space. Harmony, I didn't know. So was Harmony acquired by Intuit, or?
Well, it was just that they called it. It was
okay.
It was just the QuickBooks Online, what they called it back then.
You're the real OG QuickBooks. Like that, I'd never heard anybody say Harmony yet, unless I just like eased past it. But I had never even heard that before. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So Harmony. So you're finding, like, did you see this as the future? Like, this is the cloud. Like, because those days you can make a pretty decent living on just working with QuickBooks Desktop. You build your client base with that.
What was frustrating to me at the time was I knew that my parents, they needed to be able to have clarity into their financials. So as, from an entrepreneur family, I knew that was something that was important, not just to my family, but to everyone. And I knew, because I got so excited about, how much did I spend on these lighters or whatever it was that I was selling at the time, and how much did I end up making off of it? And I wanted to be able to see all of that. It drove me crazy that in this desktop world that people would come and deliver these stacks of bank statements or invoices, and you'd put it in after the fact, and it was dumb. I saw the entire thing as, broken. And I felt like that was a turning point. I mean, I feel like we're in a turning point right now as well. I think that, there's only a few times in history that you get to be part of a change. And I feel like I've got to be part of a change that's happened. And then this next part, I think we've got something new that's cooking up in our world.
So what was the change then? Was that the shift between looking back and looking forward?
So as far as like getting into QuickBooks Online, is that what you mean? Like,
well, I guess, yeah, I guess the big shift then was literally like going to the cloud and being online. But the difference between that, for somebody that worked near a desktop, you could get that information on the desktop platform. But
sure, there was Right Networks. There's several other programs out there at the time that we used.
Or you could share a USB file and have the QuickBooks copy and all that. It was just like there was a lag.
Oh gosh. Yeah. WebEx. I mean, it was like, there was all these different things that were out there that we used to be able to have access. And, it was sometimes great. And sometimes you'd log onto somebody's computer and you'd see porn.
Yeah.
So, that was kind of the reality at the time.
I don't think I've ever done, I don't think I've ever done that, but I have seen people's history or, working, trying to pull up a browser window, and then you see everything that they've been on. And and talk about voyeur. Yeah. That's a whole nother. So, but that's, obviously a big turning point, and that kind of leads you into, I could see that leading into the consulting, but did you think that at that point that you found your thing? This is accounting. You were an employee to start with, right?
I was. And what I found that I was doing that I loved was I was teaching these entrepreneurs, these businesses, how to use this new online tool. And because I was walking them through the step-by-steps and I was training their teams, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And the more that I could write up, the more that I could show them step-by-steps, the more that I could have, some images and train them, the more that they grew and got excited to be able to come to me and say, hey, Liz, I figured out blah, blah, blah. And, look what I can do. And that to me was really, really rewarding, to give them some freedom and their own independence.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of light bulb moments too. Like they didn't even realize the things they could do with their numbers or just the things they could do, period.
Yep.
So it changed the trajectory of a lot of businesses and a lot of people you help. So being able to see that, hand to hand and making a difference too. So then really, I just want to talk about colors too. Where did you get your sense of style? Who's your inspiration?
Sense of colors. I've always
numbers and colors. Yeah. That's
I like clothes. I do. I like some textures. So stuff that feels nice. You know, this has got like some, I don't know, some eyelets on the side of it. It's like, I love all of those tactile designs.
I love books that have a good texture on the cover too.
Oh,
like
gosh,
that
yeah.
you can feel like you can tell the book that you're holding based on the texture of the spine.
You know, I can see it in my picture up there, but I've got my Remarkable sitting here. And that's one of the things I like is this pen that goes with it. You can grab a hold of it and you can touch it. And it's, I don't know, it's nice for thinking out loud and writing stuff down. So I've always enjoyed visually pleasing things and then also stuff that I can touch. So my living room it's a bunch of geodes. So it's everything in there. You know, I've got teenagers and I wanted them to be able to come in and with their friends to pick stuff up and, look at it and stuff that's from all over from my travels.
You're a trendsetter too. You're one of the first people in this space with the bright hair. Like you made a statement too. I don't know of anybody before that. Maybe you had some inspiration there, but now I'm seeing it more and more.
Yeah.
They're all following Liz's lead.
Oh, she was in that space of colored hair. And
who?
Stacy Kildall.
I don't know Stacy. Yeah.
So I had
Stacy Kildall. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had colored hair. My first conference that I went to, I thought I need to be like everybody else and I need to go brown. Like that's like.
Oh, you were going to change it from color to brown?
Yeah, no, I did. I actually did. And I went to my hairdresser and I'm like, I'm going to go to this conference. I really need you to make me look like I fit in. And so she's like, are you really sure about this? And I was like, yeah, this is like part of my career. I want to go and learn stuff and not have people distracted by like what I look like. And I got home and she called me and she was like, are you okay? And I was like, no, I'm miserable. Like, just sitting there in the chair and looking at myself afterwards, I was like, God, I don't feel like me.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm not authentic. And that was whenever I came back from that conference, because I went brown and I came back from that conference and I was like, never again. I got to stay true to who I am.
But also the fact that, you realize you almost, as we evolve, as we grow, we kind of learn who we are too. And by changing your look, you realize I don't want to be the one that fits in. I want to stand out.
Yep.
Like, you want people to know it's you when there's a sea of 100 people. There's the bright pink hair. That's Liz. And then how are they going to tell it's you? Right.
Well, people don't always remember your name.
Right.
So, being able to say, oh, that girl that would come in and she, I've had teal hair, I've had blue hair, I've had, pink, I've had purple, and, it was just all different colors. And it was just one of those things that made it honestly easier for people to identify who I was. And then, it also was a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of an opening of some kinds.
What colors have you not had? Have you had green?
I haven't had green. No, Murph, he suggested to me years ago to go green. I was like, I don't think I can pull it off. So I never have.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point, right? QuickBooks is green.
Yeah. Well, I've got my green Vans that I really love. They're really Slytherin. So it just happened to also be green. So
yeah.
I've worn to conferences before.
Well, in your brand colors, you got the Accounting Lifeline, which is very similar to Liscio in a way. You get the crossing of the pink and the blue, and I think those are like your core colors too. I think when I think of you, I think of either the blue or the pink on the hair. I like this purple now. You got a bit of white and purple mixed.
Yeah. Well, and she'll do some more this next time I go in. It's just always this time was a little more muted.
So let's talk about how you got started with the Appy Hour.
Yeah, so
I think we skipped over a few things if we jumped to Appy Hour. Is there any parts of the timeline of the Lifeline?
It's like kind of quick, but it went from a scenario where I was an employee and I really started doing more on an equal level. And the things that kept on happening was I enjoyed this training piece and creating content. And so I just kept on creating content. I just kept on writing, and I wouldn't shut up about my excitement. And I needed platforms in order to be able to share what I was learning. And I wasn't charging for my articles. I was just like, I can't get this out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
So I
know that feeling. It's that burning desire to create. And that's, you're a creative when you first start doing something and you get more fulfillment out of that than years and years of making money. Yep. Like there's a big difference, and I can relate to that 1,000% because I just started doing that like recently in my life.
Yeah, it's one of those things that once you start going, you can't turn it off. Like it's hard to go backwards. And so I started.
And is it the feedback? Like at what point did you realize I'm good at this, or this is something I want to keep doing?
So I was writing for Insightful Accountant, which I still do weekly. And sometimes, I'll put in more than just one a week, but Intuit had reached out and they wanted to have this master class and to be taught. And it was more on the programming side. And Murph, I don't know, do you know William Murphy?
Not yet, no.
So I would say that he's like one of the godfathers in the QuickBooks world. Like he knows has all the connections. He became a really good friend. And because of this background of entrepreneurs and this background of developers, I told him, I said, I would have been the perfect daughter if I had been a developer. Like that would have been my family's dream come true. And it was funny that I ended up working with so many developers in this space. And the masterclass, that was the thing that they were looking for, is how do you connect apps? What does the API really mean? What does it mean whenever you're in desktop and you convert over to QuickBooks Online? What are those tables all about in the fields? And what kind of problems come over? And so Murph and I designed a course, and he did a lot of the background on desktop, and I did a lot of the background on QuickBooks Online. And Intuit really wanted that to be shared. And they wanted me to go on the road and teach it. And that was a really cool experience. And that's what got me into the Trainer Writer Network and touring group. And that was where I met Heather, and she and I were both like, oh my gosh, we love this app space. And we got geeked out and excited about apps. And then we were like, we're not the only people who really want to talk about apps, and people are asking us, what are the 1, 2, 3s? Which one do I pick? How do I get started? How do I do it? And that's where Appy Hour came from.
And then there's a sea of opportunity there, because there's so many comparisons and deep dives that you can do, and that was around the time where apps just blew up.
Yep.
Like the number of apps from those early days. What year was this? It was like still relatively early, but it was like 2017, 2018?
17 probably, yeah.
Yeah. And since then, we've seen an explosion. I think we're starting to see a contraction. We can get to that too, but...
Yeah, I'm excited for that next piece.
Mm-hmm. That's another turning point that we're gonna start to see some consolidation, contraction. But I don't want to gloss over like the origin story, right? The origin of this. So in this dynamic duo, right, of you and Heather, like this is where Murph was a big influence and helped you get there, but then Heather just helped you elevate this platform almost.
Yeah. So together we had this same vision, and we've always thrown out ideas, and both of us are these dreamers and idealists. And so neither of us say no, we can't. It's always more of she throws out an idea and it's like, okay, we haven't figured it out yet. Let's go try. And I think that's why we've been able to accomplish so much in such a short time.
We can talk about saying no too. That's something I'm trying to do more of. I say yes to too many things.
Well, I think that COVID did it for me. So that my word in 2021 was intentional. It's like, I don't want to be in a space that sucks again. And 2020 did. I found myself at the end of the year being very unfulfilled and just disappointed. So my word for 2021 was being intentional with my time, being
Going
intentional
deeper.
with what I did.
Mm-hmm. And having a purpose too.
Yep.
Like, when you know your purpose and when you know your direction, it is easier to say no to the things that don't contribute to that.
Yeah. And being able to have that word to fall back on, it allowed me to keep trying towards what I wanted. And because I feel like I respond fast, so I have an idea, implement the idea. Does the idea work? Yes or no? Evaluate, tweak it. And is it something that I need to dump? It didn't work and move on from? Or is it something that grew its own legs and is taken off, and then it's really fun to fly with?
You sound like a developer right there. It sounds like an experimentation process and a feedback loop and development to develop that minimum viable product, right?
Yep.
And that iterative process can be applied to almost anything, in your life too, trying different things out, trying different hair colors out and trying to figure out, and, maybe there's no end in sight for certain things, but it's an evolution too. And you start learning more and more about, we never end learning about ourselves too, and learning about, who we are, because I think we're always evolving as well.
I think we're always evolving. And I think that that's where I'm at right now, is I'm evolving into this place of, how do I feel about having an accounting firm today? Is it really
How do you feel?
I think that the industry is broken as a whole. And I felt like it was just me for years. It's like, oh my gosh, trying to meet these deadlines, trying to make sure that you get all this work done and doing the best that you possibly can. And, late nights and, sometimes weekends. And then I was like, okay, well, I've got to grow this team. Well, then it turned into, how do you grow a team of these superhumans that have the ability to do so much that's necessary in the accounting space? And I hired last year 10 employees, and I let go of about that same number. And I just found myself in this position of, what I really needed was to be able to have people who were good in their specific talented area. And whether that was somebody who was great at tax, was somebody who was great at compliance work, somebody who was great at advisory, those are all different types of people. And then also you've got to have the person who's willing to have the conversations with the clients. Like, that's so rarely one person. So it's difficult to grow a team with all of these people that have all of these abilities. Instead, what I found is I really needed to create kind of like a pyramid where I had people who really enjoyed doing bookkeeping and they really liked that piece. And then having people who really enjoyed going through and doing write-ups. And then, the people who enjoyed being able to say, I'm overseeing all of this as a project, and how is everybody doing? But the problem is that in most US accounting firms, that's difficult to sustain. And thankfully I had resources to be able to pull from to invest into this group of people. But where I found myself was, I just didn't enjoy it. I just haven't really enjoyed having the accounting firm because then I went back from being really involved to, then I was in this management leadership position that took me away from the development. Mm-hmm. So I just didn't have enough time to do that all. And where I'm at right now is I've outsourced, but I think that ultimately, my
When you say
success.
outsourced, what have you done to outsource?
So I checked out a lot of the different outsourcing solutions that were around. And the one that I ended up working with was the one who asked for input. They wanted to know, what did I think about workflow? What was important to us? What kind of advisory tools were important? And that got me excited because they were looking for somebody like me to be able to be that insider, to give them input into how is their product? What's their delivery? What's, the value of it? And also, how did that fix my need for all of these various team members that were difficult to sustain?
Mm-hmm. So give me a lay of the land. I'm going to ask some hard numbers now. Accounting Lifeline, and relate to you in so many ways. Like I can go into it, but I want to frame the conversation too, because that's kind of where I'm at now with my firm in a lot of ways. So give me the currently, like, top line, number of employees, and you could consider like an outsourced person as a full-time equivalent.
So 5.
5. Okay. And then revenue.
And revenue, so I am under the 500,000 mark. My firm has always been one, I say always, it's really in the last 3 years been more of this incubation lab. Before then it was 2, it just wasn't as intentional. I was connecting apps, but I wasn't really thinking about my firm as being a lab. And then I really shifted my mindset to be able to say, my clients trust me. I want to explore all of these apps out there. I didn't want to stick to one industry. I love e-commerce. I loved construction. So I wanted to try out all of those apps.
Right. So you don't have a niche per se because you like the variability. And I agree with you there. That's kind of where I'm at. And it just still, it always goes back to reminding me of Heather and kind of what she did and where she was at. I think, she was a little bit smaller in a sense, but she found that her passion, right, is a lot of exactly like you. I mean, in so many ways. And she moved on to, okay, I'm going to join another firm and let them handle a lot of the firm stuff that I don't like running. Like, I don't like managing people. I don't think she did either. And like trying to find the right people. I mean, you went through 10 people, a turnover of 10 last year. That's got to be exhausting.
It was, but it was such a learning experience. And
Sure.
again, it's like I'm willing to do it and go all in. And then I was able to get to the end of the year and go, not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you find that you're kind of happy? Like, to me, I found first comfort in I don't have to grow. So I don't care about growth as much anymore. I want to grow my bottom line. I want to grow my margins, but I don't care about getting to a higher number of employees or getting to a larger revenue mark. Like that kind of stuff didn't satisfy me. It kept me going, but it was all very finite almost.
Well, I don't need my accounting firm to grow because it is a lab. And I don't need it. So I'm not above 20 clients, and I will never be above 20 clients. And where I'm at right now is having that outsourced firm to be able to handle, do I have a light month? Do I have a heavier month? We're getting ready to come up on year end, and being able to say, I'm really ready to just make sure that I'm very year end prepared. Mm-hmm. And that's a nice feeling because my team isn't exhausted.
Do you guys do the full boat of accounting and taxes for your clients?
No, thank God, we don't do tax.
Okay.
No.
So just the accounting, and then you've got other firms that you work with mostly, or just let them kind of find their tax people?
I'm all about connections. And so one of the things that I'm always doing is who's a good tax accountant? Mm-hmm. And then we have this list that we share, and it's like, okay, who's on that list that they're great? And then who's on that list that we know to stay away from? So we have this list of people we work with.
Yeah. So then let's, kind of shift over too. So this is the incubator to also, create your, like, I'm sure that the exposure that you get to a lot of different apps in here, or being able to test them, helps with the Appy Hour stuff and helps with the consulting, because now you have real life situations that you can work with too. Like, this would be great for this client. And if your clients are diverse enough, then you have a pretty big opportunity to test different things out if you need to, or if you've already tested it out, then you can apply it to the real life situations. So it's all part of your flywheel. Like it sounds like almost every one of your opportunities, I don't know what the ACE lifeline is, but the consulting, the life, the accounting lifeline, the Appy Hour, they all fit into one another. They're all.
Yeah, they all fit into one another. And, with the ACE, because it's franchises, that's great because it's easier to train a team on. Franchises have processes. Mm-hmm. So, that's really super helpful. And then, how do they fit into each other? Is that your question?
Well, I'd see that they fit into each other. Like, it's more like illuminating now where they're all part of, like, did you ever consider just having one, like, why are they all separate businesses too?
Because that way I can I can remove one arm if I need to.
Have you done that?
I'm considering it right now. I'm in that spot where I'm determining, am I ready to move past the accounting firm? And I think that that's a real possibility for me. And the thing that, I keep seeing is, in my buddies who have sold firms, people want to buy workflows. They want to be able to understand, what are you doing that works? And I feel like our workflows work for us. I think they work for our client, and our communication style works for our client. It's easier to sustain. And then the other piece of it, with having the bookkeeping piece outsourced, it's going to make it where, if that was the plan, it would be easier to let those clients continue on with the same level of service.
So do you see, first, are you scared by this? Are you scared to let go of something?
Hell no.
Okay.
No.
You're excited.
Yeah. No, I really enjoy consulting. And it's like I said, I feel like I'm right here on this verge of, we've got something that's brewing, that's happening. Our industry, everybody that I'm talking to, they're underwhelmed by what they're doing. They're not fulfilled. And so we've got to do something else. Otherwise, how is this industry going to continue? And yet at the same time, we're so perfectly positioned. That voyeur part of me, so many other accountants have that too. And so we're able to take all of that information that we're watching. We've got to be able to do something with that. And, some people are calling it advisory, whatever it is. But we've got to take that, and that's got to be the shift. And then with the developers' help, we've got to be able to then maintain that. So to me, where I feel like I'm going is, if I think about something like Microsoft BI, where I can pull in all of my data and I can have it there in like a managed console, so I can see, for example, my Shopify clients, they want to sell on Google Analytics, and they have XYZ amount of advertising that they're doing. And yet here's their sales in Shopify. And we are able to see, how is that product performing? And then be able to also pull in, QuickBooks data, and have it all inside of one area that's being fed and it's being updated. That's where I feel like we're going. These managed consoles, that's the value.
Like dashboard.
It's like bringing in all of this information that's all over the place. Like, you've got information everywhere. So how can you take this chaos and how can you bring it into a spot? Then it's useful. Yeah. Right now it's chaos.
Yeah. Well, that goes into the consolidating bit that we were kind of alluding to earlier. Like, you're kind of consolidating your life and deciding what you're going to be intentional about moving forward. And then also the consolidating of all apps, or creating one central place to see everything for simplicity's sake, and to make it easier to make decisions.
Right.
Too. So one of the trips I'm really excited about, I know this is going to date this conversation because this will be over by the time I release it, but I'm very excited about this Appy Hour Camp.
I can't wait to have all of these people who are, it's an educator camp that the developers are coming in. So calling it an educator camp, what that means is, you've got some people who go and present and are in the know and teaching people, and we all have areas of specialty. So pulling in all of these people to have this conversation about, what the hell are we doing? And how can we understand which each of us is doing, and then be able to talk to the tech, because the tech want our input. They want our insights. It's for them, the same thing. They're wanting to be able to grow. They're wanting to be able to create a product that's viable. So that to me is, I think that community, that we already know each other, but to pull in and then to support each other, I can't wait. I'm really excited about camp.
So I love the focus of educator, because I feel like this is a evolution of Accounting Salon. So Accounting Salon was firm owners. How do we become better firm owners to our clients and create better, and create that community around that. This is a bit of an evolution. This is like the people like you or like me, that are, we have a firm, but that's not our 100% passion. So
Right.
Where do we apply that? And so you've got, tell me the impetus to this idea. Like how, like it's an awesome idea. I think it's great. Everything that I've.
So where we're going with it and what we're doing, you need to expand on that just a little bit. Is that?
Well, I guess how did it start? Like when did you guys come up with the idea?
So for me, I enjoy camping and I wanted to get away from my space and my digital space. And I needed to break free of that. So going out and camping allows me to have those thoughts, to be able to think past my now. And that's exactly where I think our industry is at. So being able to pull these people who are usually sucked into the digital world and say, let's go outside, let's be under the stars. No, we're not literally camping, it's a lodge. But, you know, that idea of the sky's the limit, that's where I want to take these people. That's where, you know, Heather and I both are very aware that apps are our future, but that our accounting industry is just full of so many unhappy people.
So we need a lot of clarity too, and figure out some kind of direction, because I think part of the reason that we're unhappy is we're being pulled in so many directions and there's no right answer. There's no central voice of truth, because you can have one person spewing one thing out and another person saying something the complete opposite or the same thing, but in a different way.
Well, and you know, this idea that there's so much information that we're supposed to be managing. It's like, okay, so gone is data entry. Okay, we know that doesn't have any value. There's no value out there. So then where does the value add come? Okay, well, is it this compliance piece? Is it the advisory piece? You know, what is it that's your value add? So how are you going to price yourself now on value? Well, that's all great. But again, we have this problem of information is not centralized. So the value is yes, we've got to use this data, but we've got to be able to pull it into some type of manner that is digestible and can be presented to a client, so that way they can make these kinds of decisions. Yeah. Larger businesses have that, but these micro businesses, they don't.
Well, I'm excited to see your next phase of this evolution too. I think this is awesome. If you could, you know, kind of take this away for the firm owners out there that are listening and give them a piece of advice, right? Because some of them are questioning their purpose, right? And I think a lot of us are either running toward something or running away from something, or both in a lot of ways. You know, you see more and more people now that want to sell their firm or merge up with somebody else, or keep growing and acquiring new firms and just growing for, not for the sake of growth, but you know, that's part of their impact, is they want to grow and have a bigger impact for their employees, for their clients, whatever it might be. So I don't know. I went on a little soliloquy there myself, but give me a
easy.
I know. So give me a little bit of advice.
I would say is your firm, do you have a strategic plan as far as on an organizational level? Do you have fulfillment? Do you have direction on what it is that you're doing? Are you ending your day with exhaustion? Are you feeling like this plan that you've got just is so hard to actually grasp? You're like, oh, it'll be better next year. Those are the things that I think are warnings to look out for. And so many of us have felt that from 2020 to, oh my God, how did 2021 get worse? And then here we are in 2022 and it's almost over. And I think that's where you've got to stop and evaluate. Are you happy? Is this what you're wanting to do? And if it's an almost answer, if you're like, yeah, but I have these pieces that are almost, it's like, try to identify what it is that you can peel off and either pass to a different team member or try something different. You know, I love this idea of a cohort. You know, pulling in this cohort of people who maybe are great at, Don Brolin's awesome at tax and representation. You know, that's who I would go to. So maybe we need to have this design of a cohort where we're helping each other in areas that we struggle.
Shout out to Dawn. She's done something like that. Like she had a partnership with two other firms and they were like, you know, kind of all sharing resources, and they created somewhat of a cohort. Sounds like a partnership in a lot of ways, but I think it's a little bit more than that because everybody's fulfilled and they got their own drive and purpose. That's pretty dope. And also just like sitting down and questioning those things and really trying to figure out what you're grasping onto. What is it that's driving you too? I think to a degree, I don't even know if I've figured that out yet. I'm starting to figure it out outside of the firm, but within the firm too.
I think it's that thing that you get to where you're like, okay, have I done this and I tried this? And is it time for me to do something different about the way that I'm doing this? Because I still want to fulfill this goal of having an accounting firm. Well, then how do you do it differently? So I think that that's the piece to pay attention to, is that if you're, the whole insanity comment, are you trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results? It's like,
is that the definition of insanity?
Yeah. It's time to try something different.
Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I think that's how they phrase it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love this community. I do. And I want it to succeed.
Yeah. Well, you're sort of like the mother to that change. And so, you said, you also alluded earlier, like there was a big shift back then, to the cloud. What's the big shift that we're seeing now?
I think that everybody's really paying attention to, part of it is like you said, the apps are consolidating. So I do think that is part of the truth of it, is the apps realize that there's too much data and that we're doing things to connect all this data. And so they're starting to do more to either make direct connections themselves or to be able to make it easier to connect. But the other piece of it is security. I really feel strongly about, whenever I'm connecting to apps, my client believes that I've vetted that app. And part of that vetting, they believe, is I've vetted the security. And the truth of the matter is that our industry is so bogged down with doing that I don't think the majority of people have time to do that. And they don't even know what to look for.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. And when you say security, do you mean data security? Do you mean personal, like information security?
All of it. My thought is this. It's like, where is my data? Where is my client's data going? And knowing that there's these data lakes, it's like, well, what's happening with these data lakes? And I get it. I understand that we need these data lakes for benchmarking, and we need it for, being able to, smarter machine learning. It's like, okay, I get it. But at the same time, is that data then being shared with another source? Or is there another ulterior motive for that?
Yeah.
And so that's the piece that I feel like people have got to pay attention to. So whenever I'm talking to developers, I'm saying, you need to be sharing with us what your security protocol is. You need to tell us what you're doing with the data, because if there is a data lake and there's a leak, we're talking about all these different apps that we've got to go connect. Well, which one was it? And you want to be able to know, who are you partnering with? What are they doing? So that's why the developers need to care. And, there's a lot of them that do care. And so they're bridging and they're creating a community amongst themselves that I want to continue to foster. That to me is super important. But to be able to say, each developer should be concerned about the things that they're connecting to because of these data leaks.
Yeah. Well, with open APIs, some of them have no control, right? But being able to have, so part of this solution, or part of, you say, what we're marching toward, is that central hub that has all the information, everything's pulled in. But that could also be the source of the leak, because it's pulling everything in, and then somebody taps into that one place and they get everything.
That's where I want to discover. It's like, where do I want to fit in? And so, I've been on this journey with SwissNet this year, and the thing that they're doing is IT. They host QuickBooks, but the other thing they do is they're a managed IT solution. And so with SwissNet, the thing that I told them is I needed to be able to, with my team that I onboarded these 10 people and I offboarded these 10 people, all of those are passwords, all of those are apps. And so I wanted to be able to say, I need a hosted environment for my team to work. So there is no C drive. And I want to be able to give them the computer or have them log in.
There is no C drive.
Everything is there, and they've got access to everything that they need to have access to, but I don't have any security issues. And then the next level is, okay, well, I've already vetted the app, so I know my tech stack is secure. and then we don't go outside of that tech stack.
I think it's so crazy. Like I don't know if I feel like a little helpless in ways, because a lot of the things, the password protection I just saw recently, LastPass was hacked. And that's everything that, as far as protection goes, like keeping everything separate from different people, and then the source of everything gets hacked and you have no control over that. Like, so what ways do we protect ourselves from security threats like that, where somebody that has a good security or their security company gets hacked?
I think that that's something to pay attention to. So if you're going to a security company, the goal there is they want to do the best to protect you. What about all of these other smaller companies, all of these smaller, apps? It's like, well, are they sharing with you that they've been hacked? Are those things that you're even aware of?
Yeah.
So I think that that's part of your vetting, is that you're never going to be 100% safe, but you can do your best to be able to create this environment that you've done the best that you can to protect yourself. And I think.
And what are we protecting everybody from?
I think that what we're protecting as an accountant that I want to protect my clients from is I want to do what I can to make sure that they're not subject to hacks.
But what are we hacking? Are they hacking their identity?
I think that there's a lot of things that are being hacked. Part of it's the information. So if I take it even from not even thinking about my clients, if I take it down to my children's level, and I think about it on a really, really basic level of my kids have got Facebook, my kids have got Snapchat, they've got Instagram, they've got all these different apps. And so they're, even texting apps, they're doing all different kind of stuff in apps. Each one of those is a data collector. So now I've got my child who, because they've connected and they're using and they're doing, all of that's being monitored, and they have price tags on their heads. And so my children are now commodities that can be sold because of the fact that they're connected to tech. Well,
you are the product for a lot of these platforms.
You are the product. You are. And, whenever you get on your phone, we already know that they're listening. And so, you get little, maybe you were talking about this or that, here we're talking about security. I'll probably look on my phone later and have articles that are on there about security. All of that's happening. Somebody said, I was working with a client and they told me, I won't talk to you any further if you've got an Alexa in the room.
But now Alexas are everywhere. My thermostat's Alexa. My Ring doorbell is an Alexa. Like everything. I don't even have, to a degree, where we've surrendered ourselves to all of that because we're getting them free. I have a stack of Alexas, and now I'm thinking about plugging them back in because they were actually to a degree, they were useful in some ways too, if you could work with them.
Right.
I can't get rid of it. Like these, I tried to turn everything off. I even tried to turn off but you can't turn them off. They don't ever really turn off. You can maybe say that it's off, but it's, as long as it's plugged in. Yeah. You used to say this about computers too, right? People were afraid, I'm going to get hacked, so I'm not going to go on in the cloud. I'm not going to go to QuickBooks Online or Xero because I don't want to get hacked. If your computer's plugged in, it's susceptible to getting hacked.
Right. And I think that's where I want my computer. And it essentially is a terminal where I'm working up in the cloud.
Absolutely.
That's my layer of encryption and security, is that I don't have a lot of things that are accessible on my C drive. Just don't. And it makes it really easy because I kill about every 2 years. I kill my computer, developing content and all different kinds of stuff, trying out all the different apps. So,
you're not a Mac person, are you?
I'm not a bat person.
You're not a Mac person.
Oh no, I'm not. No.
Yeah, I can tell because the green bubbles in the text. So I think everything goes kind of like the difference. To me, I always used to say the security difference. For me, I felt safer in the Mac bubble because they present themselves as really caring about security. That's like usually their personal privacy. So I know like iMessage is encrypted. I know that when I'm using a Mac, I got to really try hard to get a virus or to get something hacked. Like I really have to make an effort because they won't let you install anything. So it's a really closed system. It's a closed environment.
But I go back to that layer of I'm an independent person and I want to be able to do what I do.
Right.
And so I don't want to be locked down in the Mac environment. I want to be able to say, where is it that I want to work? And if, it's this single sign-on type of environment where I'm hosted and I have all of my apps living there, that allows me to connect what I want to connect, work how I want to work, create my tech stack that I want, and yet still feel like I'm secure because I have an IT support company who is monitoring what I'm doing.
I think my IT support company is Apple in a lot of ways. Like, to a degree, when we had an office, we got hit with a ransomware, but it only hit the PCs in the office. And because everybody was on a Mac and we just had 2 older PCs, we had one guy on a PC, and that's how we were susceptible. And they were trying to charge us like $60,000 to gain access back to these computers. And then we realized there's nothing on them anyway. So we didn't, we just basically scrapped it. And that's why we ended up going we were full Mac anyway before that. But I think that's part of the security conversation is choosing that. And it shouldn't be that if you use this product, you're more secure. And if you use this one, you have to have an IT company. But in a lot of ways, like if your hub is an open source where anybody can kind of access it and you can install anything, then you do have to be a lot more careful too. And everybody's got to be careful. But I think, the fear's out there. And I think part of the bottom line too is that we have to prepare ourselves for what to do after a breach and be prepared to handle that better because you never know how it's going to happen. And then getting to the point where we know that at some point, one of these systems, QuickBooks, is going to get hacked at some point. And if QuickBooks gets hacked, that's everything. That's all of your clients, whatever else is connected to QuickBooks, they may have access to too. So what do we do in that step, that along the way?
Well, I would say that with QuickBooks, they haven't been hacked yet. So they're definitely doing something right. And the other part of it is, they have these servers, so cloud servers. So, if something happened, it would be in one centralized location. So it wouldn't be everything at once. But, I think the idea is, don't create simple passwords. Oh my gosh, I do not like that Google tries to ask you to save your password. Or Edge does, or your phone does, your Samsung,
they almost force you. You got to really try to not save the password.
Yeah, I turn all that stuff off. I turn it all off. I don't want it to autofill. Now you can actually have it autofill, addresses and those kinds of things without trying to save payment information or passwords. But anything that I see that pops up like that, I turn it off.
Okay.
That way I know.
So that's part of being prepared before it gets hacked. But if something were to get hacked, what's the first thing you would do?
So that's the nice thing about having a IT support company is that then I can hop on and say, what's my protocol? And we've gone through.
Or do you have somebody to point the finger to?
Well, I
kind of like that idea too. Like to say this person's got it handled. That's how people see us in a way. Our clients see us if we're doing their taxes, right?
I see what you're saying. And yes, and one of the things that Swissnet offers is they have this training for your team. So you can have your team go through which emails look suspicious, and then they test them. They'll send things and they'll give feedback on which team members opened it anyway.
I've seen that. Yeah, that's really cool. And that's part of the training too. I mean, that's part of being more prepared to then, you create these learning opportunities. You create opportunities for them to make a mistake so they can learn from it too. I mean, that's, we're all going to kind of learn a little bit more along the way. And then so do the hackers. The hackers always learn a little bit more. They're always a few steps ahead of us.
God. I think that one of the sexiest things that I've seen in a long time was to watch a hacker hack a hack. Like,
and let's kind of summarize what people can do if they're not doing anything already, right? I did go into the difference between a Mac and a PC, but my listeners are tired of hearing me talk about that, especially if they're PC people. And, the differences between using password protection, and two-factor authentication.
Mm.
You know,
That certainly helps. I think that the other thing that helps is, have you talked to your employees about, are they using Wi-Fi? Are they hardwired in? You know, what kind of passwords, if they're using Wi-Fi, what kind of passwords do they have on their Wi-Fi? I mean, all of those are part of the security protocol, like being that piece that, you know, we're talking about hygiene. So being in a position where you're using good practices, like for us, if we're going to download something, we've got it mapped so it doesn't go over to a location that's easily accessible. And you know, the goal is that if anybody was to take a laptop, there's nothing on it. There's
Right.
nothing that would be useful to anyone.
So that's protecting ourselves from the hardware. Now, the software in the cloud, you know, to make steps to say, if your C drive is hacked, it doesn't matter because all your people are saving it to this other drive out in the cloud. What about protecting that drive?
You know, I would say that's where it comes into play that for me, I wanted to work with a developer to say, this is the type of environment that our accounting industry needs. And so that is what we're doing, is I'm helping them to give input as to what we need. And we need a secure place to work to allow for remote workers. We know that that's the norm. And we know that sometimes we've never met those new employees that we put out ads on LinkedIn or Indeed, whatever. And so to be able to onboard and offboard all of that protocol that you put into place, that's the thing that helps you with that security piece.
And they could be anywhere in the country. So anywhere that they're accessing this data, they have access. So anybody that has a password could access it. So again, protecting the passwords. The two-factor, if LastPass is hacked and you have two-factor authentication, nobody could replicate that. I mean, unless they figure out ways to do that, which I'm sure that there is. So, and then also their own personal, like hygiene, like you said, like choosing links and knowing which links to click and what could potentially happen, educating them.
You know, the other thing that I would say too is that security is not just easy. So don't go the easy route. You know, it's really, really easy to save to Google passwords. That's super easy, but that doesn't mean that it's secure. That doesn't mean that just because it's easy for you, well, it's probably easy for somebody else to break into that and hack it.
Easy and cheap. Anything that's cheap, we are the product, right? Like if anything free or it's a really cheap platform, we're the product in a lot of ways. And easy is the easiest. Yeah. And in turn, it's easiest to hack.
So you're right. Whenever you're talking about two-factor authentication, whatever that is, whether it's a code that's text, you know, thumbprint, some people do face scans, you know, whatever
one of
it
these
is.
like key fobs.
Yeah, those little toggles, you
They're
know,
a
any
pain.
of those, yeah, they're totally a pain. So I would say figure out what it is that's your method. For us, Heather convinced me to switch over from Google to Microsoft for everything. And because I'm somebody who loves apps, I had to think about the Microsoft environment as a bunch of apps because I felt lost to begin with. And I think that that's normal because there's all of these apps. And if you think about putting into play learning each one as its own individual app, then it's not as big a deal to discover what all is available.
Well,
And
part
then-
of the when you're looking at, you know, Google versus Microsoft, at least they have their own app suite. And if you know how to use one, you pretty much know how to use another one. There's going to be stuff that you don't know about how to do certain things, but the interfaces are very similar across all apps. Knowing how to use a PC and you use Windows, anything you use in Windows, you're going to know that the top left, you can close it out. You know, the top right, you can do this. General, they're very similar. So then it's easier. Like that's the central unification. So then when you're using all Microsoft products and then you use Power BI, it's pulling in all of their own data anyway, too.
I agree, because now you've got a hub.
Yeah.
And the hub then creates this platform. You were saying all of the apps are constricting. Well, that's part of what's happening. So for Zoom, I don't need Zoom anymore. I've got it inside of Microsoft. I don't need Slack anymore. I've got it inside of Microsoft. My calendar my calendar link, all of that can be in one spot, which then it makes it where it's really accessible and it's easy for my team to understand what's happening because they can see it. It's in one general location.
And part of the reason why, at least us, why we were on Google was because we couldn't use Microsoft easily on a Mac. Now you can. Now everything, even Windows, you can do on a Mac.
Yeah.
Pretty easily, like from the cloud too. So Microsoft is having a bit of a revival. Like we all grew up on Microsoft. That was the computer. When we were using those big computers, most of us were all using Microsoft. I was on the PCs.
I agree with you. And I think that our accounting industry is really coming back to Microsoft because Microsoft went through this phase where it just kind of stopped developing.
Yep.
And Google was like opportunity and they seized it and they ran with it. And that's why I switched over, as I was able to do so much. And then now I think that it's became a bit of a, we're capitalists. And so I think that there's been a bit of a shift in what the plan is. So I'm coming back over here to Microsoft because they've been quietly developing a lot.
And it's also, I think it's safer to a degree with our information. Google, again, we're the product. Google's cheap and easy. And I mean, I'm still using Google for a lot of things, but
I will too. Yep.
But, the fact that Microsoft is its own company and I don't think they're using us for our data. They're using us to use their systems. I mean, they've always been a developer and first and not a information seller and advertising, giant like Google. That's where they make 90% of their revenue is advertising.
Well, and if I think about, who is the government contracting with is Microsoft. And so that's another piece that I know that they've got layers of security in play. And so Microsoft is the safest place for them to be able to share out with their employees.
Yeah. It's a centralized system in a way. And again, you've almost kind of convinced me to start looking at Microsoft again.
Well, the thing that I've discovered is there's not a lot of training out there. So for accountants specifically. So I've been on a mission with Rob Smith, who's working for Liscio. He's got a community that has a ton of Microsoft, especially OneNote resources. And I want to continue to work with him to build that out. As I'm going through and I'm training my team, I want them to know how to use the calendar. How do I, use Power Automate that replaces Zapier, that now my team can also have these workflows that are built in for them. And it's specifically designed to help them.
Wow, you've opened up my world here. There's 3 people that I've never heard their names before. Stacy Kildale, William Murphy, and Rob Smith. This is awesome. You're the wealth of information to a whole other circle of the world that I haven't explored yet too, of the accounting world. This is cool. So getting ourselves prepared for post relief of a hack is not something that too many people have had to deal with because we hear about all these hacks, but firsthand, I don't think I know anybody that had a serious breach yet.
Andrew Wall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, last year.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he's doing the same thing. He's on the same mission with security. And so myself, Don Brolin, and Andrew Wall, we've all been talking to Swissnet this last year because they're leading a lot of the ways in security. Another security company that's doing awesome is Practice Protect.
Practice Protect. I was just with Jamie.
Yeah. So Jamie is freaking awesome. He's a really, really cool guy. And we also went with Practice Protect for our firm while we were onboarding and offboarding because we wanted to have a vault to be able to keep all of our passwords in and deploy them inside of Practice Protect.
Shout out to Practice Protect. Shout out to Swissnet. This episode is brought to you by Security.
Right.
Swissnet.
Security in the accounting world.
Yeah.
Well,
and we're going to start seeing more players in that space too. We don't see it that much because to a degree, I still don't even know what we're protecting ourselves from. If a lot of this is personal hygiene and personal ways of doing it, but then it's education too. They could be providing education and they could also be scapegoats. So when something were to happen, if they have some kind of liability insurance where they're covering it, we all have, and also we didn't talk about this, is having the right insurance in place too. like the errors and omissions. That's one. But isn't there the like we all have to have that goes without saying. But the cybersecurity, that's it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, if you don't have cybersecurity, you're really missing out. So that's a big one. I think that every firm should have it. And it's cheap. It's really not that expensive. As far as like the insurance price, that's the bulk of it. But for the layer of adding on cybersecurity, and there's multiple different levels, and I would say go all in. It's still not going to add a whole lot, especially in our industry.
What is it really protecting from? Like you have the cybersecurity, but then if something were to happen, is it going to what's the potential damage? We don't even know of a breach, right? Like, what are they going to pay out?
Well, and the other thing that Andrew Wall experienced was he went to his insurance company and said this breach happened, and then realized that he had gone outside of the insurance protocol. And so it wasn't covered. So that's another thing that you need to be paying attention to is what's the protocol in writing with your insurance company.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And
these are all things that we should be knowing.
This is why I love these kind of conversations. We don't talk about security as much as we should. And that's, to me, like, we all think that we're untouchable. Like, we all think we're going to live forever. We all think nothing bad's going to happen to us until something does.
Right.
And so being prepared for that and trying to take all the necessary steps. So and then I think, just the understanding too, and we did talk about this, but that was when the volume was a little garbled, but the, understanding that we are all potentially at risk anyway. And, just kind of knowing learning it more about what could potentially happen too. So educating ourselves. And do they provide, does SwissNet and I'm sure they protect, they provide education for the team and the testing solutions or testing
and resources that, I think it's really important to stay up to date. So we're so busy in our industry. We have so much that we're trying to manage that being someone who the information is coming to, I need to have what are the little snippets that are important tips of the week or important tips to be aware of, those kinds of things. I think that information needs to be shared. So, if you get a hack from some company that looks like it's, I'm just thinking about one that happened recently, is that it looked like it was a bill to Intuit, but the URL didn't make sense.
Oh.
And so a team member got that and they were like, they're not a team member who gets bills. And so they're like, what the heck? Well, thankfully they hadn't clicked into it. They had just looked at the URL and they were like, there's something wrong with this. So being able to share that out really quickly, having an IT company to go out and vet it, to do the hacking of the hacker, and then be able to come back and verify and then tell everybody, don't open these emails. That's useful to our community.
Yeah. Yeah. Just kind of like, we're getting it from all angles too. I'm getting texts now that are, suspicious in a lot of ways. And so texts, emails, we used to get calls, I think we still do, from hackers, trying to trick us into things.
Yep.
It could come at us from all angles.
It does come at us from all angles. And, I'm somebody who I believe that you have to have an online world, and it's got to be something that will continue to allow you to grow and build onto this ecosystem. I just at the same time am aware that we have to safeguard ourselves. And so I wouldn't be just click happy. I wouldn't be somebody who, I do try apps, but I also vet them. I also go through a bit of a protocol. And the thing that, is part of my security mission is to start encouraging apps to put on their websites what kind of safety measures do they have into play? What kind of security do they have built in? We know that Xero and QuickBooks, they've got their own vetting process, which is why they say to go to, the website to be able to look at what apps for QuickBooks Online to connect. Xero, same thing. So they've done some vetting of it, but we need to understand, what does that mean that they've vetted it? What have they looked at? We need to be more educated about what kind of certifications are out there.
Yeah, and it all goes back to one of the things you said earlier, the money and control. To feel like we're out of, to not know about this stuff gives us that unease sense of we have no control over it and everybody's, pulling our strings. But to understand all of it and how it's working, you have some more control over the decisions that you make, the products that you use, and then in turn, you have more security in a lot of ways because you're at least you know what could potentially happen, right?
I feel like we're constantly in this go faster mode, and it's like, go faster and more tech. But I feel like what we've learned over the course of the last 3 years is we have to slow down, and people need each other. So we do have this information overload. We do need to pull it in so that way it's useful. And we also want this connection to each other. So moving forward, I feel like the more education that we have and the more collaborative that we are, the better that our industry will be.
Yeah. Well, I feel even better, but talking about security too. Like I didn't know this was going to be the security episode, but this turned into a really good deep dive into how broken our industry is and how much worse it could get, and in a lot of ways too. And not having to live in fear. Like, you could live in fear of everything's potentially hackable, or you could live in some kind of confidence to know, all right, I got this under control.
Tell my kids all the time, I'm like, I don't want you to go out and be scared in the world, but I want you to be smart. Be smart.
Yeah.
So the more that we're aware and the more that we're educated, the smarter we are.
Mm-hmm. Smart's a relative term, right? Like not everybody is born smart, but you could learn a lot of things along the way and become educated. And yeah, it's cool. So any parting wisdom or closing arguments here?
Man, I think that this is just the beginning of cool stuff to come. I mean, I love our industry. I love these kind of conversations.
Yeah. Well, again, I feel like you're a mother to the industry and you want to fix what's broken. So you're a caretaker and a mother, and you want to fix what's broken and educate people and consult and bridge that gap between the tech and the accounting or the firms, right?
I want to be that person who takes the time to go and investigate and bring forth to my community.
Investigate and experiment and iterate and improve.
Yep. There you go.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Liz. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it. It's been fun, Scott.